Okay, I'll just give you a quick rundown of where I want to go in this video so you can decide if it's going to be for you. I'm going to start in Wings 3D and using a tip from Ultimately, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, so I'll let you read that, where you can use this control here, the geometry graph, which I activated by clicking on the window and geometry graph to control whether things are locked or visible in a scene. So I'm going to create a grid, and I'm going to use this control here that I suppose I was telling you where I was going with this. Oh yes, okay, so after creating something in Wings 3D, I'm going to use the one of the lenses from this set here to distort the scene, and one of the metals from this to just apply an interesting material. So that's where we're going, and I was going to create a grid, and in this option here we can bring up a little dialog that allows me to reduce the number of columns and rows, which will speed things up for the purposes of this video. Right, face selection here, select a face, press I for identical, right click, and I can inset faces because it's a context sensitive menu to the type of thing that you've got selected. So I'll just inset those faces and then right click again and extrude normal, and then I'll just dip that in there and then inset again to create a smaller square in that, and then extrude that, lift it up just to create some little spires. Alright, line selection tool, you can see the lines are selected on the top. I don't want that, so I press space to deselect everything, select line selection, select a line, press I for identical, press C to connect the middle of those faces, middle button to rotate there, and then bevel that out a bit and scale uniform to make that swell, and then I'll scale axis Y to reduce the size of that a little bit. Okay, so that section there I want to be of a different material. I want to make that glow in the final render. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to extract that along the y-axis, and I'm holding the shift key down to make it go up by distinct steps. Now those are all, if you look here, separate objects. So if I select the entire object selection tool and right click, I can combine those into one object, and then I can lock that object, which means now if I select a face on there and press identical, it doesn't select the identical faces that are there. If that wasn't locked and I pressed identical, all those faces would be selected. Press space to deselect everything, and bearing in mind what I want to do here, that would be a bit inconvenient. So what I'll do is I lock this selection at the top and select all these faces, press identical, and now I can inset those, so just inset those like so, and then I can intrude the surface a little bit, so that puts that out of the way. So let's say that's going to be my model, but I want this to extend in all directions, potentially infinitely, or at least as far as the render engine's allowed to are going to allow me to do that. So I better reassemble this first before I forget. So I'll unlock that, select this object here, and move it along the y-axis back down into position, holding the shift key down so it drops back exactly in place. Right, now you can see that that's covered up that little bridge that I put on that surface. So what I could do at this point is select the face and extrude it normal, and that can just tuck it in under the surface, but it'll be on top of the other one if I've done it right, and if not, then that's going to be a problem. So if I'm doubtful of that, which I am now, I can use this control. There's an eye here, I can hide that one as well, which means I can select those inner faces, press identical, and right click and do hole. So that's made those hollow, so that's eliminated any problem between the collision of those two surfaces. So now we've got those which are going to be lit up, hopefully, and I want to put this entire thing in a cube that I can make mirrored in Bryce. So I'll create a cube and select the entire thing, and I'll hold one of these keys down. I'll find out in a second. So it's scale uniform. I want to go to take it up in steps so it can meet that edge exactly. That's a bit inconvenient, it's not meeting that edge exactly, is it? It did when I had 10, so it must be a fractional step. So what we're going up in, well, let's try 125% then. So I'll Control Z, take it down, and scale uniform. And now if I hit the tab key at this point, I can type in my own number. So I'm going to try 125%, And see, yes, that's hit the edge exactly. That was fortunate. Right, now I'm going to move the whole thing up on the y-axis. You can see where it's just meeting the edge of the other object inside, and that's going to be the mirror. So as long as these are separate objects, Bryce can put materials on them separately. So I don't need to go through the trouble of naming these materials, because I could. Well, I'll give you the example in case you want to try this in other software, but you could, for exporting and purposes and that. So if I select the faces and right click, and then I can right click on material and give this new material name mirror, for example. Bryce won't recognise this, but I'll just show you. I'll give it a colour, I don't know, any colour. What colour I've got? A diffuse colour of, I don't know, green. Okay, right, so I've done that now, but supposing I want to do the ones inside, I can just hide that cube when I can find it, and then I can select the entire object here, switch to face, right click again. I could call that one glow, and then it have me pick a colour out again. I'll make it yellow just for the sake of argument. Okay, and then if I was to select this one and then select the faces, right click and do right click on material, I can ground, and I'll make that one, I don't know, a purpley colour, purpley blue. Okay, and you can see that's coloured it. I'll switch that cube back on. So those are my three components. Because there's separate objects there, I'm not going to have a problem with that in Bryce. You can see in the outline it's also named the materials for us. But that's a little bit of digression, sorry about that. So file, I'm going to export this as OBJ format. I'm going to call it Glowcore 2. Sorry to go with one, because I thought I'd better test my idea before I turned it into a tutorial. Right, I'm going to launch Bryce now. Hopefully that's saved okay. Take a little moment to bring it into the scene. I'm going to get rid of the infinite plane underneath there. File, import object. Find my file here. Now, because it's in OBJ format, it will automatically be smooth, but I want all these surfaces to be perfectly flat, so I need to edit it and click on unsmooth. Otherwise it would render a bit strangely, because it'd be trying to interpret flat surfaces as smooth ones. Now I'm resizing the entire thing, so it'll get to a point where it's encompassing the camera. Right, this surface here. So it's not named the components for me, so this, I'll just hold Control key down and find out what's there, and we've got grid 2, which is the entire object, and this one component here, which is a cube. So I'm going to use the attributes to rename this mirror, just so to make life easy for myself, and change the family to something recognizable. Now press Control down and select this component, which is the inner glow. So I'm going to make that orange, for example, because I usually use that for light sources, and call that glowy bit. And then there's the rest of it. So that's Control the Control key down, click on that bit, and I'll put that as metal work. Okay, so there's my three components, there's my camera. Right, I can use the family groupings now to identify it, and if you want to name the family bits, you can just click on the colour there and put like a glow in, for example. It's handy to do this when scenes get more complex. Then you can go through your scene and name the components, and it'll make it easier when you come back to it later on and you've forgotten how you've got everything laid out. To do the glowing bits, I'm going to do them very simply. So there, select a glowy bit or use the family selection tool or the works, and go into the material lab, and I'm going to make it ambient. So I just set this ambient to fully white in this case. Now in the sky and fog, there's the ambient colour, and if I just got a quick render now, you can see there's a little bit of a blue glow. That's the haze. I'm going to take advantage of that haze for an effect. That's glowing grey because of ambient, so if I set that up as a orangey red colour, for example, that'll give it an orangey red glow. Now I'm going to select the mirror, modify the material, so take the diffuse out. I've remembered the material setting from Wings 3D, that's interesting. Give it 100% reflection and get rid of cast shadows, receive shadows, and self shadows. That will allow the Bryce sun into this scene. And now I'm going to name the metal bit, not name the metal bit, I did that. Select the metal bit, go into the material lab, and I'm going to give it one of the metal 2s. I'm going to try this reflective iron metal, which will have a nice specular highlight. So I've got a combination of a sort of gold colour and this glowing red. I'm going to modify the haze now so that it's also an orangey colour. So now at the moment things are looking very linear because we're using the rectilinear camera that's built into Bryce. So I'm going to tip the camera down so it's looking at the ground a bit, so get a bit more of an impression of what's going on here. Lots of reflections. And then I'm going to record this camera position using the memory dot and bring in one of the wide angle lenses, so this extreme wide angle lens from the lens kit, and switch to the overhead view. I need to select my camera and buckle it to the lens, but bear in mind I already saved my camera position so I can jump back to this position without any problem. So I'll go into the attributes for the camera and I'll select 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So I've taken all those things out. Now I'll go into the family selection and select the lens, go into the attributes and link the lens to the camera. So the lens is now bolted onto the camera, so when I switch back to my camera position, it's got the lens involved. So you can see now it's changed the geometry of the scene quite dramatically. These checkered highlights are coming from the interaction between the sun and all the mirrors. So I'll swing the camera so it's pointing at the ground and move it around a bit, so we're pointing between some of these things and perhaps down. And then I'm going to use the control to widen the field of view to make the effect more extreme. So this is the ground and this is what's being reflected on the ceiling, so again some interesting effects. Now I'm going to pull the camera in closer to the ground. See the point when these spires drop below the level of the camera, they'll start to look like they're coming around the back of us. I'll eventually hit the ground, so I don't want to go too far with this, but I want to see some of these spikes coming out around the outside. Okay, so one of the recent videos that I did was to do with maximum ray depth. You can see this is rendering very quickly because it's just regular rendering, so we can really turn the maximum ray depth up without any problem. So in these gaps here, it's because we're running out of reflections. It can only reflect so many times before it returns fully black. We've got the haze in there to help reduce the effect of that, to create a bit of interest. But what you can do is increase the maximum ray depth in this control in the render option. So I'll try 12. We'll push the render time up because there's a lot of reflective surface in here, but you can see it's already added a lot to the complexity of the scene. So if we can see where this is sort of failing, if we don't want to keep adding more reflections, we could increase the density of the haze so it comes in a bit stronger. Oh, a bit too much there, you can see what the effect of that's been. So I'll just lower that down a bit. It's difficult to get just the right level, so it's just interacting at the point where it's covering that up. Now I don't know whether I want a dark effect with the haze because I've got plenty of light, or a light effect, or a different contrasting colour might be nice. I don't know. Oh, actually I quite like that. I'll make that blue a bit darker then, so it'll give it a sort of 3D-ish effect with the it's quite a saturated blue. With the red, make the red stand out more. Okay, I could try moving the sun around to change the effect of the highlights on the metal surface here, but essentially, I'm just checking the time to see how long I've gone on for. It's taking about 15 minutes. We're more or less there. I'm going to darken this haze up a bit more, and I'm not sure whether I like that or not, whether I want this to be receding slightly, get a bit more reflection going. Since I can, the added complexity. You can see that the highlight is being caught on the metal there. Do I want to try a different metal? It's tempting actually. Okay, I'll just try a different metal while I'm here. It won't take a second. Switch back to camera view, render options. No, not render options, I want material lab. What we got in here? Oh, that's a bit gaudy, this rainbow coloured one. Yeah, let's try that, that'll be hideous. Not bad, quite interesting actually. I thought it was going to be terrible, but probably a bit too colourful for my taste. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, I like these copper coloured ones. There's a very bumpy one there, that'll work well with the reflections. Scratch grey, dark brown. Let's try that, because we've already got some reds in the scene. And I'm going to change the haze colour again. What do I want with that? I think I want a dark red. Oop, that's rather a lot of red. Let's increase the intensity of the sunlight and see how effect that has on the scene. That's made it rather bright in there. Let's see. So anyway, essentially you could go on playing with this for hours, or at least I could, because that's what happens. And you get oh, that'll do. Okay, right. I won't meddle any longer and hold you up. That you've got the basic idea as it is. You see, we're using regular rendering, so this is going to be rendered out in no time at all. The AA pass might take a little while because what's going to happen is it's going to start investigating all these interreflections. That's going to create quite a lot of contrast in the background there, and the AA pass will tend to slow down. As you can see, it's slowing down now as it recognises there's quite a bit of anti-aliasing to do in this scene. But essentially, that's it. You've seen it all. It's just one way of using the wide-angle lens to create an interesting, if abstract, image. But at least it's got some kind of structure to it. It looks like a metal sphere with spikes poking out of it, suspended in some kind of spiky, stripy void. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll experiment with these things if you get your hands on them.